Making it into the playoffs on points alone just became much more impossible as we watched the 14th different winner of this season cross the finish line.
This episode of Above the Yellow Line is presented by Haymaker Coffee. If you work hard, run hard, fight hard, and play hard, Haymaker Coffee has the coffee for you. Make sure to use the promo code RACE10 to get 10% off your order of Haymaker Coffee.
Hey race fans, it's Taylor, and welcome back to Above the Yellow Line. Before we get into all the action, I want to shout out all of you who made it to the live stream on Friday. It was so much fun. If you're not joining them, you're definitely missing out. We're going to do a gaming live stream this Friday at 9:05 p.m. on the Toby Christie.com YouTube channel, the one you're watching right now, so make sure to tune in for that. But besides the point, we saw another new winner of the season. We have a lot more silly season news to discuss. Also, maybe some new rivalries, like getting away from the Chastain and Denny Hamlin stuff, which I'm a little refreshed about. We're going to talk about it, but first let's get to our results of the Am Better 301 at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. If you watched Sunday's race, it was Martin Truex Jr.'s to lose. He started off the weekend by snapping a 4-year pole-less streak. He got the pole this weekend for the race and had a lot of speed, leading 172 laps. A dominant race for Martin Truex Jr., and as I said, it was his race to lose, and teammate Christopher Bell was the one that he lost it to. Christopher Bell won this race, leading 42 laps, and there's 3 main points I gotta point out when we talk about this win. If we can recall, the 20 team and the 23 team swapped some crew personnel to get those pit stops looking nice and clean. Now, for those of you saying that this was a great swap after this weekend, we saw Bubba Wallace get a 3rd place finish that we'll talk about in a little bit, and of course, Christopher Bell winning the race. If you're saying that this is a done deal, the swap was fantastic, all is clear, we're going to have no issues in the future, I would say hold the phone for just a second. Atlanta, the first weekend of that swap, things did not go well for either driver. I know they both lost points in the playoff standings. This weekend, of course, we saw a major benefit to that swap, so I'm going to give it like 1 or 2 more races just to see how the pit crews do. I feel like it was a flawless execution on their part this weekend, so kudos to them. But before we say that this is a done deal, the best thing that's ever happened to those teams, let's pump the brakes a little bit and give it a few more weekends. Another interesting stat about Christopher Bell's win. The win should not surprise anybody. Actually, Dom Joseph pointed out these stats to me in his 3 Xfinity Series starts at Loudon. He won all 3 of those races, and in his 2 Truck Series starts at Loudon, he won one of those races and finished 2nd in one of those races as well. So this is his track. If we're going to have bets on whether Christopher Bell is going to win next year at any point, you should have this track circled on your calendar. So congrats to that team, that 20 team of Christopher Bell, on winning the Am Better 301. Let's take a look at the rest of your top 10. In 2nd place, getting oh so close to another win, was Chase Elliott. After the race, he was very harsh on himself, saying, you know, it was poor execution on his part. He wasn't doing so well. My God, you had 2 wins in the past 5 races, top 2s or top 3s. I don't get why he's being so hard on himself. I know he's probably trying to keep himself humble, but I know he was very close to a win, but it was a really good day for that 9 team, still leading in the drivers' points. So very good day for Chase Elliott. Then in 3rd place, we have Bubba Wallace. This is the best racing I have seen from him at a non-superspeedway track. I feel like he also did really well at Kansas, if I'm remembering correctly. You'll have to fact check me in the comments, but there's one race this year that I felt like he was really strong, and then he had a crew mishap, and then things just went bad for that team. But this is the most consistent that I've seen Bubba during a race. He maintained his top 10 or even like a top 5 run most of the day. So it's a really good step in the right direction. Again, I think that crew swap did really help, but it's going to be a few more weeks till we can tell if this really made the difference for that 23 team, but a really solid day for Bubba Wallace. Then in 4th place, we had Martin Truex Jr. He dominated the race, like I said earlier, led 172 laps. His downfall, though, was during a caution. When he went to pit road near the end of the race, he ended up making a 2-tire call, not a 4-tire call. With a track like Loudon, it is so important, not only track position, as we saw whenever somebody had the lead, they bolted out and nobody could really catch them, but you have to have tires to be able to advance your position, and unfortunately, Martin Truex Jr. did not make the right call. I think if he did have a 4-tire stop, he would have possibly been able to retake the lead and win the race, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case for him today. I could say the same thing for Kevin Harvick. I believe he also had a 2-tire strategy call, or at least that pit stop that he and Martin Truex did together after that caution did not favor them well. They went back in the pack in dirty air, or at least I think they restarted within the top 10, but they weren't near the front of the pack. So it really hindered their ability to get back to the front. Kevin Harvick ran in 2nd a lot of the day, or in the top 5, and had a top 5 finish, which is really good. But even then, we'll look at the point standings. That run that he had on Sunday did not really help his position in the playoffs as Christopher Bell won. It shook a lot of things up. Like I said, we'll talk about it in a second, but moving on to our 6th place finisher. In 6th place, we had Denny Hamlin. He had a pretty poor day, but somehow he managed to get back into the top 10. I don't know when that happened, but a guy I got to talk about in 7th place who had a really solid day, and this is actually his second top 10 of the season, which is alarming and bizarre, was Brad Keselowski. And not only is this Brad's second top 10 of the season, this is his best finish of the season, which is also alarming and bizarre. If we remember, the beginning of the season, back in January when I made my bold predictions, I said that Brad Keselowski was going to win twice this season. I am horribly mistaken. I don't think that's going to happen. If anything, I think he's going to get the win at Daytona. I'm not sure yet, but nevertheless, a really solid day for Brad Keselowski, and I'm hoping their team can keep it up. Next up, in 8th and 9th place are the Trackhouse boys, Ross Chastain in 8th and Daniel Suarez in 9th, even when I felt like they didn't have a good day in that. I think today was the first day I really saw their cars not being race contenders after everything that we've been through this season with Trackhouse. They still managed to be in the top 10, so it's very good for them. And then rounding up the top 10 in 10th place is Kurt Busch. With around 22 to go, he had to pit to get fuel, maybe some fresh tires, and he managed to drive his way back to the top 10. So a really solid day altogether for Team 2311 Racing, so congrats to them. That was inside the top 10. Outside the top 10, looking at our key players, we got to talk about Michael McDowell in the 28th finishing position. This is his first time since the Kansas race that he has not finished inside the top 20, which I was pretty surprised about, but then again, Loudon is a pretty tricky track, and again, we're going to the tricky triangle coming up this weekend, so I'm not sure if Michael McDowell's going to do better this coming weekend or not, but I'd like to see him continue to get those really surprising, and not really surprising, but really amazing top 10 finishes that his 34 team has been able to accomplish. So I'd like to see him do better, but I guess a little hiccup here and there is not that bad. All right, now we got to squash some beef here. In the 23rd position, we had Austin Dillon with a caution on lap 163. Kyle Busch ended up spinning. And then on our screens, we saw some retaliation for what? We have no freaking clue. Why Austin Dillon decided to run into Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski then promptly returned the favor pretty harshly, running into Austin Dillon's car. Post-race comments were not that kind between the two. I think Brad was a little bit more respectful of the issue than Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon said, I just don't like how some guys race me. I'm not going to talk to Brad. I don't feel like we need to. Brought up the issue from Michigan last year, which was pretty harsh to bring that back up. I didn't realize he would still be holding a grudge to this point. And then Brad Keselowski, during his post-race interview, said, I don't need to be a jerk in the media. I will reach out to Austin. We need to talk about this privately. So that is how we are handling these issues. One guy just doesn't want to talk. One guy is wanting to, talk about it, kind of work things out so things can not happen in the future. Some instances that could cause really bad wrecks, even some injuries. I think Brad handled this really well. However, I will say him hitting Austin Dillon like that, for me, was out of character for Brad. I feel like he's been very composed this season, and I don't know if it's just frustration that's boiled over this season because he had a really good run. Like I said, a top 10 finish for Brad. I don't know why there was that frustration in the moment, but I don't think we'll ever know. Austin Dillon thought that we on the TV saw what happened. He said, you guys, you saw what happened. I just got really frustrated. I'm like, we didn't see what happened. So he didn't really have a valid explanation as to why they got into each other, and I don't think we'll ever know, but we'll have to see if this develops. Maybe this will be a new story that we can cover in the broadcast as opposed to talking about Ross Chastain over and over, which will always be a storyline. I posted something on Twitter like, hey, that's always going to be a storyline. Ross Chastain is an aggressive driver. Let's move on to something else. Maybe this is that something else. So we'll have to watch out for Brad and Austin Dillon in the future. Maybe something will come of it. Maybe something won't. So those are your key players outside the top 10. Finally, there is one DNF I got to talk about, and that is the DNF of Alex Bowman. An alarming stat for that 48 team. 3 out of the past 4 races have been DNFs for this crew. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if it's a summer slump, but obviously going into the playoffs, when you have this many races, you're not finishing, you're not really getting those good playoff points. That is concerning, and I will say I don't think I had Alex Bowman going far in the playoffs this year, if I'm remembering my mock bracket correctly. But I will say I don't know what's happening. If there's more to the story, of course, I'll let you know, but not good for the 48 team at all. All right, let's look at the point standings. Of course, we got to take a quick look at the above the yellow line points. I'm not in the lead. I have 52 points with a pick of William Byron. Didn't do as well as I thought he was going to do this weekend. However, Adam Lucas is in the lead with a pick of Martin Truex Jr. with 57 points. Third in our point standings is Dom Joseph with a pick of Kurt Busch. And finally, with a pick of Ryan Blaney, Brandon Lowe with 46 points. I do want to stop to explain Brandon's logic a little bit. If you remember last week's show, I talked about how I'd been picking the race winner a week in advance. I thought that Tyler Reddick was going to win Nashville. Chase Elliott won Nashville. I thought Elliott was going to win Road America. Reddick won Road America. And then if we fast forward to Atlanta, I thought that Ryan Blaney was going to win Atlanta. So obviously he had to win this weekend at New Hampshire. He did not. So that breaks that really funky streak that I had, a really surprising, because I mean, I'm never right on my race predictions, and that just kind of goes to prove it. At least I had some sort of consistency going, but Brandon Lowe, unfortunately, that streak did not last, so sorry, buddy, you're last in our point standings. So now we gotta look ahead to the points that actually matter. The playoff grid. Chase Elliott obviously is still leading that charge with 2 wins and the most points for the driver points. And though Christopher Bell was already above the cut line, it made things much more impossible for the drivers below the cut line as their deficit grew. To start, Kurt Busch and Tyler Reddick swapped places on the playoff grid from last week. Reddick did not have the best day at New Hampshire, finishing in the 21st position. And obviously Kurt Busch had a great day, so he bumped up. Then if we look at Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex Jr.'s point standings, Blaney is the second guy above that cut line, plus 105 to the good, and Truex is right on that line, plus 68 to the good. I talked about this a few weeks ago, that I thought that Ryan Blaney had no concern, Martin Truex Jr. had no concern, Christopher Bell had no concern getting into the playoffs on points. Now that Christopher Bell has won, we have 2 spots left. I am a little concerned. We have 2 spots left for the playoffs, and especially with a track like Daytona still in the regular season schedule before we go into the round of 16, I feel like we're definitely going to have a surprise winner, and then we're going to have probably another winner hitting that 16 mark. Whether Truex is going to win one of those or Blaney's going to win one of those, I don't know. But if you're going in to Daytona and you are the only guy above the playoff cut line that does not have a win, I would be concerned, because I guarantee you we're going to see a surprise winner. I said that I think Brad Keselowski is going to win that race. I think so. At least I think Martin Truex Jr. could win Richmond. He's very good at short tracks. Ryan Blaney, though, I don't know. I can see him probably winning Michigan. That's a really good track for the Fords. I also see maybe Kevin Harvick winning Michigan if possible. I'm not really sure, but if I am Ryan Blaney, I'm not feeling secure. If I'm Martin Truex Jr., I'm absolutely not feeling secure. Of course, that points deficit that Kevin Harvick has, minus 68, isn't comfortable either, but crazy things can happen. Truex could have a really bad race. He could DNF from a race, giving Harvick an advantage. Vice versa, maybe Blaney has another really bad race and it puts him in a bigger points deficit than he's already in. Of course, he's plus 105 to the good, but if things keep going bad for Ryan Blaney and that Penske crew, things could be looking much worse for that 12 team. So if I'm Ryan Blaney and I'm Martin Truex Jr., I'm concerned. I'm not going for points anymore. I'm just going for a win. That's what's going to secure your spot at this point in the game. So those are your playoff standings as they stand right now. Like I said, expect more surprise winners. And speaking of crazy, let's look at the drivers' points, because as you will notice, the guy 3rd in points, 4th in points, and 9th in points, Blaney, Martin Truex, and Kevin Harvick, are not in the playoffs. And they might not be if we get more surprise winners. And the guys 17th and 19th in the point standings for the drivers' points, Briscoe and Hamlin, are locked in. This is something that used to not make me mad, and now that I'm more involved in the sport, I'm really watching, and I don't really have like a favorite driver anymore. I'm more just like rooting for the sport as a whole. I feel like this playoff format that we have does not favor the sport as a whole, because it rewards winning but not consistency. You can have a guy that's finished 2nd place all season long, but if he doesn't win and we have 16 different winners, he doesn't make the playoffs, and I do not think that is fair. Brian Murphy actually pointed this out. He was in our segment Through the Timeline. If you haven't watched that episode, make sure you watch it. He talks about his journey into the sport and his time at Stewart-Haas Racing. He actually pointed out that no driver, I think, has been screwed over by this playoff format more than Kevin Harvick. And a perfect example, 2020. Winningest driver of that season, I think 9 or 10 wins, does not make the championship 4. Mind-boggling. I feel like we gotta rework this playoff format somehow. I loved the chase format. I will say I really did. You got 10 guys in the last few races battling it out. The slate is just kind of wiped clean. Guys that are best in drivers' points. There's no playoff points and none of that crazy stuff. You just have the top 10 drivers of the season on points alone battling it out for a championship. I feel like we need that back, because that rewards consistency, because it is going to be stupid. Just lack of a better word, stupid, if Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex Jr., and Kevin Harvick do not make it into the playoffs, and obviously not all 3 of them can. We have 2 spots left. So if anything, at least Blaney and Truex should make it in, and if they don't, I'm going to be pretty pissed. So let's hope they get the wins, and if they don't, then I feel like that definitely is a call for NASCAR to reevaluate this points system. So I've loaded some aggression. Now let's look at the Zyloware MVP of the week. We got to start with our LVP though, and I will say it is not Martin Truex Jr. for the reason that he showed a lot of speed this weekend, dominated a race, and just because you dominated a race and lost it doesn't mean that you should be the LVP of the week. He is my honorable mention though, but just not the overall LVP. Now I will say though, this week's LVP goes to an entire organization because they totally missed the mark. This week's LVP goes to Penske. Cindric was the highest finishing driver on that team in 13th. Ryan Blaney in 18th, and Joey Logano in 24th. They don't want to look back at what happened at New Hampshire. I have no clue what happened, but we got to look ahead to Pocono. They have some wins there, so hopefully that is a good turnout that Penske can have at that track. But as for Loudon, they are definitely the LVPs of the week. As for the MVP, it's pretty obvious. It's Christopher Bell, not only for capturing his second career victory and for being really good when it mattered most during the race, but also for holding that really scary lobster. It is a scary creature. I wouldn't want to touch it either, so that deserves kudos on its own. But Christopher Bell and that 20 team, you are this week's Zyloware MVP. Alright, to close out this recap of the race, let's go to our race rating above or below the yellow line. I asked you guys on a poll on Twitter and YouTube what you thought. Here is what each respective audience had to say. On a Twitter poll, 23.1% of you said this was a great race, 57.7% said good, 15.4% said okay, and 3.8% said bad. From our YouTube audience, 22% of you said this race was great, 51% said good, 21% said okay, and 5% said bad. Now looking at your specific comments, Johnny Frisbee from YouTube said great and another winner, number 14. 2 spots left and even Truex isn't safe. Adrian Leon from Twitter said the race was good. Had a dominant car, action throughout. Cautions, tires fell off at the end, differing pit calls, a new 2022 winner, teams executed well. I thought overall the race was good, not great, definitely not a classic, but a solid 9 out of 10. And finally, from ATYL crew member Adam Lucas, he said, a wild day that truly rattled the playoff picture. I enjoyed the battles throughout the field and the fact that we had some tempers boiling over mid-race. Although quite a few of my personal faves and race picks struggled, it was an interesting race of strategy. Loudon is always a fun stop on the schedule. The racing can be hit or miss, but I have learned to love and appreciate this track quite a bit. Some tracks deserve one race, and this one definitely puts on a good one whenever the series makes a stop. I give this race a 71 out of 100, which makes it above the yellow line. So I will be honest, this race was not my favorite. It didn't wow me, but that doesn't mean that this race should be bad. I will say I originally gave it a rating of 50%, but I thought that was really harsh, especially just because this was a classic race. I mean, like I said, it wasn't bad at all. I just didn't feel engaged, but I did like the battle between Bell and Elliott at the end. A lot of that varying strategy, too, I liked during the race. So I gotta give this race a 60% above the yellow line. So that closes out the And Better 301. Now let's go down the line talking about key moments from this week. Gotta talk about some more silly season news. It was announced by Ty Dillon that he will not be competing at Petty GMS in the 2023 season. So let's talk about what that means, where he could go, and who could fill his seat. So according to a few interviews I saw between Ty Dillon and the media, it just seemed like the relationship wasn't working out. I feel like Petty GMS approached him and said, hey, this isn't working, and I guess they mutually were like, yeah, this isn't working, let's separate. So where do I see Ty Dillon going? Well, he actually raced in the Xfinity Series at Loudon in the number 48 for Big Machine Racing, and he finished that race in the 8th position. So for me, that was a little bit of an audition where he could end up full-time. I do not like the rumors of him ending up in the number 8 car for RCR. I don't think he's fit for that ride, or maybe not like qualified for that ride, but he doesn't have the chops, I feel like, to fill those shoes. So I don't see him going to RCR and having a Dillon family camp. I do not see that happening. If anything, he's moving down into the Xfinity Series. Now, as for who's filling his ride, the top candidate that I have heard is Noah Gragson, and I feel like Noah is a better fit for the 42 than he would be for the number 8. I feel like RCR kind of wants to keep it in the camp, and I feel like now that I'm thinking about it, Austin Hill is going to be that top candidate for the number 8, in my opinion, and then Noah Gragson would be the top candidate for the 42. Whether that's what happens or not, I'm not sure, but that's kind of how I feel like things are going to shake out. A really quick segment, I know, but let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on the Ty Dillon move. All right, now it's time to preview the Tricky Triangle Pocono for the M&M's Fan Appreciation 400. Make sure you have your M&M's on you this weekend, and we got to start off with our track facts and driver stats. The track length for Pocono is 2.5 miles long. The race length is 160 laps or 400 miles. Stage 1 is 30 laps, Stage 2 is 65 laps, and the final stage is also 65 laps. As for our driver stats, the last driver to win at this track was Kyle Busch. The active driver with the most track wins is Denny Hamlin with 6. The active driver with the best average track finish is William Byron with an average finishing position of 9.1. The team with the most track wins is Hendrick Motorsports with 18, but right behind them is Joe Gibbs Racing with 16 wins. Finally, the wins by manufacturer. Chevrolet has 33, Ford has 24, and Toyota has 11. All this information from driveraverages.com. So for this weekend's To Watch To Worry at Pocono, I'm going to be real with you guys. I don't have a graphic plan for this because I'm going to be watching everybody and worried about everybody. The point standings are crazy right now. We got to watch the guys that are just above the cutoff line that don't have wins, the guys below that could win and get in. We also have to watch because, heck, I don't even know what's going to happen. We don't know how these cars are going to race at a track like this. It is so incredibly unique. So I'm going to be watching everybody and worrying about everybody. Is that how you feel about this weekend? Let me know in the comments below. So with that, we are done with this episode of Above the Yellow Line, the show where we talk all about the NASCAR Cup Series. I gotta give a big shout out to Rob Branding, who was actually at New Hampshire Motor Speedway last weekend capturing some beautiful pictures and video for us. So thank you so much, Rob, for doing that. If you want to check out all of his work, follow him on his socials. I'll link them in the description below. But if you want to follow us more in all of our content at Above the Yellow Line, make sure to check out our social media pages at _TaylorKitchen_ on Twitter for post-race polls and daily questions, and Above the Yellow Line on Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Also, make sure to check out TobyChristie.com on all social platforms to find great motorsports content, and TobyChristie.com to hear and read more from the team and your favorite drivers. Last but not least, I want to thank Zyloware and Haymaker Coffee for supporting Above the Yellow Line and TobyChristie.com. You can find all of our socials linked in the description below, but before you check those out, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this with your friends and family, and guys, thank you so much for supporting us here at Above the Yellow Line and TobyChristie.com, and until next time, I'll see ya.